morning, good afternoon, good evening. All right, welcome. Yeah. All right, welcome everyone. And what a lovely day. And what a lovely way to start our day. Having our desire to look into what has been called the perfect law of liberty. This morning, as we gather together in this brand new session of A Course in Miracles with a brand new idea that's found in a brand new workbook lesson 167. And what an opportunity we have this morning as we gather in this space that is provided by Truly Foundation, a nonprofit organization that has been founded for the sole purpose of sharing advanced spirituality, which we call genuine spirituality, whereby we use multiple resources to share what we define as the truth that is true always. And that goes far beyond the basics, the elementary things of the spirit. As Paul said, that we need to leave the elementary things and go on to perfection, go on to maturity. But that only happens as we expand our awareness, as we take on an expansive position. And that can only happen as we open ourselves up to that which we are not aware of. And so as we come and sit each day for the next 170, 80 more days, we've already been here 167. Every time we meet here and look into one of these new workbook lessons, what we're doing is saying yes to awakening more and more to what is real and moving away more and more from that which is not real. And so there's a transition or transformation that is occurring as we go through these 365 days of mind changing is what we're doing, mind reversal, because we have clearly, quite clearly determined that it is the mind that needs to be realigned, readjusted. It needs to align itself with this original state of being. And the original state of being of the mind is that which is of its creator. And so as the creator is, so is our mind in its renewed state. So this is not a discovery of something new, but is but a remembrance. It's but a recognition. It's but an awareness and a consciousness of what has always been present. So sometimes we call this an exercise in aware presence. We become aware of what is present. And we know from what we have learned that the presence of reality is everywhere, or the presence of God is everywhere, or the presence of truth is everywhere. The presence of light and love is everywhere. All that the Creator is everywhere in reality. So this state of being that seems to be opposite to what our Creator is, this seemingly state of being, we're going to talk about that today as we look into this, again, perfect or mature law of liberty, the law of God, the one law, the law of love, or the law of life. We're going to look into this mirror. We're going to look into this glass, and the glass is going to become the glass is going to become clear. We're going to look into the mirror, and the mirror is going to reflect back to us what is. And so it's going to be a lesson to remember. You can count on it. So let's jump right in. So in Workbook Lesson 167, the idea for today reads, there is one life. Or it could be said, there is only one life, or there is only life. Or we can say there is only God, or there is only love, or there is only reality. We can actually say there is only you. Because the whole idea that there is one life is building upon the reality that there is but one thing. There is only oneness. There is only oneness. Regardless of the appearances, regardless of the experiences, there is only one. One, speaking of what? One source, one creator. There's only one thought. There's only one idea. So the idea for today is there is one life, and that one life we share with the one source, or we share with God. So here there's an acknowledgement. There's two parts to this, that there is only the one, and we're part of the one. Because the one is all there is. And so it is in the nature of the one to extend itself. We call that or term that as creation. And everything that is in creation is shared. Is shared. Not only what the source is, but what it extends, which is likened to itself. It is all shared as one. And within that oneness is all there is. Within that oneness, there is nothing else. There's God is, and there's nothing else. So if there's anything to be experienced within that oneness, it is experienced within that oneness. There's nothing outside of it. There's no opposite to the one. There's no opposite to the one source. So therefore, there is only one life, which is what God is, which is what reality is. Just all these are synonymous terms. And therefore, our awareness of a self, our consciousness that our awareness that we're conscious, the mere fact that we are conscious, the mere fact that we are aware, the mere fact that we are alive would have to indicate that we this aliveness and this awareness and this consciousness that we are aware of is the same consciousness and awareness in life that the source is. So, and it's the same consciousness and awareness in life that all life is, all living things. There's not different, there's not multiple lives. There's not different kind of life. There's only the one life. Now, this is this idea right here that we are sharing today, and we may take us 2 days to get into this, because I've already looked all the way to the beginning of the end of this, and it will wake up A sleeping giant. This is what we're going to learn here in this 167. Man, I'm telling you, it is beyond time and space. It's beyond a vision. It's beyond knowing. It's beyond truth. It is the real McCoy. We're going directly, like they say in Monopoly, go straight home. This will take you directly home. So I invite you to be very attentive to the lesson today. So it starts out by saying there are no different kinds of life. There's only life. There's not different kinds of life. There's only life. There's only awareness. There's only consciousness. There's not awareness, consciousness, and then something else. There's not life and then something else. That's not God and there's something else. There's only the one life. For life is like the truth. In other words, there are not different truths. There are no opposites. It does not have degrees. Life doesn't have degrees. 1 degree of life, 2 degree of life. Life doesn't have, truth doesn't have degrees. It's just life. It's just truth. And its wholeness and its completeness. And that's all there is. Nothing outside of that. There is no other source. There's only the one source of life and of truth, which are all the same. And so if life and truth is all encompassing, mean what? It encompasses all things. And we can understand that what we share is not a degree of life. What we share is not a different kind of life that God is or that truth is. But what we share and what we are aware of and conscious of is the exact same life and the only life that exists. It's the only reality that exists. It's reality. And therefore, that which is unreal does not exist. It makes sense now, right? And as we embrace this truth, therein lies our constant peace of God. We can finally relax because what? The truth has been revealed. The truth has been what? Remembered. It's not nothing new. It is what it has been all the time, and what it will be beyond time. So as we are rubbing the evidence that we've been asleep for a time and begin to see clearly now, because this whole idea of oneness is causing all of the blockage, all of the veiling, all of the dizziness. It's causing all that stood between us and reality to dissipate. It's like when you walk out on a cloudy morning and it appears that the day is going to be, just a faint day where you're not going to see the blue skies. But all of a sudden, there's a light that shines through. And the next thing you know, all of the haziness, all of the clouds have departed. The curtains, it's like the curtain opened, and now we know what's behind the curtains. We see this beautiful blue sky. Well, it was there all the time. So what's happening to all of us? Exponentially, if you are engaged in this type of uh, activity whereby you are on a daily basis spending time with yourself, spending time with the truth, being intentional about renewing your mind and not being conformed to this world, not being conformed to the state of sleep, but being transformed or being awakened by the renewing of your mind. If you're involved in that each and every day, things are becoming clearer and clearer. We're not looking through a glass darkly, but we get to the point where what? We see clearly. And so there are no different kinds of life. This is wonderful. It says, for life is like the truth. There's no different kind of truth. It does not have degrees. It is the one condition in which all that God created shares. So all that God created shares the one life and the one truth. It's the one condition that all creation shares. Like all God's thoughts, it has no opposites. There are no opposites in life. There's no opposite to life. There's no opposite to truth. There's no opposite to God's thoughts. There's no opposite to reality. Every time we have reviewed the definition or the characteristics of reality, one of those characteristics is that what? It has no opposites. There's no opposite to life. There's no opposite to truth. There's no opposite to God's thoughts. So if that be the case, we can conclude that there is no death. Because what God creates shares his life only. So there is no death. That's not even a possibility of the idea of death. Because what God creates, and God is the only one that what can create. He shares his life. There is no death because an opposite to God does not exist. That which is unreal does not exist. And finally, there is no death because the Father and what the Father creates are one. The Father and the Son are one. In other words, God the Father, God the Creator, God the source of all things, extends himself or herself or itself because its nature is to share all of itself. Love shares, love extends, love gives, and that which it gives is exactly like itself, not separate from itself, but exactly like itself or exactly itself. So in creation, it's almost like God just said, okay, he just turned around to himself and said, look at me. Look at what I've created. It's just like me. And he called it, I am that I am. Yeah, it's like God looked at himself and said, that is what I am. Exactly. No difference. Not separate. No duality. No object and subject. Watch it now. Keep your mind of the spirit open here because we're going deep in this conversation today. This is advanced spirituality. You know, when you go to the theme park, you know, you got the kiddie section and then you got the what? You got the adult rides. And when you go, the adult rides are what? Faster, higher, more what? Movement. So much more that far exceed the kiddie rides. So in advanced or genuine spirituality, we're going farther, we're going deeper. Paul said, how deep, how wide is the knowledge of God? He said, how is it so much past finding out? Why? Because there's no end to it. So what we are a part of is past what can be found out about it. Because there's no end to it, because it's continuing to what create and extend itself. And that is what we are really a part of. We are not really a part of this dream state of being in time and space in this limited environment where things seem to be born, to be born and to die. We're not really a part of that. It seemed like we are a part of that. It's like we're the observer in a dreamlike state, because in reality it doesn't exist. Death doesn't exist. Even birth doesn't exist in reality. All of this comes from an idea, a tiny mad idea that's impossible to happen. Why? Because it's impossible for us to be separate from source. It's impossible for us to be separated from God. It's impossible for us to be separated from each other. So now, within the dream that we have awakened from, we are bringing these ultimate truths and ideas into the dream. Why? So that all humanity, the rest of that which God created, can wake up and stay awake. Because what we desire is not in a dream of separation. What we desire, we already are. We're looking in the wrong place. So there is no death. So see, death is just a concept. It's an idea created by a mind that believes that it's separate. Death has nothing to do with physicality. It has nothing to do with a body. It has nothing to do with matter. It is just an idea, an erroneous idea that we have made the truth. And then we made it, and then we're afraid of it. That sounds like insanity, right? So in this world, in this separated world, this world of perception, this world, this dreaming world, this world of dreams and illusions, this world of hallucination, this world of vain imaginings and fantasies, there appear to be a state that is life's opposite. There appear to be an opposite to life. It said that it didn't say that there is an opposite to life. It said it appears to be that way. See, in this state of separation, we appear to be separate. We appear to be these individual selves. We appear to have personal history. We appear to have experience in all these events and activities. We appear to be in a body. We appear to be wise. We appear to be smart. We appear to be our own creation. There appear to be a world. There appear to be something outside of God. It appears that way. Notice now, all that which appears isn't real. All that is seemingly isn't real. When you look on the ground and you see this figure that looks like you following you, it's a shadow. It appears to be real, but guess what? It's not. So take that idea and apply it to this world. The world is not real. It just appear. It just appear to be real, and it's a miscreation within our own minds. So in this world, there appear to be a state that is life's opposite. We call it death. There appears to be death in this world, in this three-dimensional world that we're in. You say, yeah, there is death, Oliver. There are funerals. We see tragedies. It's reported every day. People don't show up anymore in bodies. There is death, Oliver. What are you talking about? Just stick with the lesson. You say, so we call it death. Yet we have learned that ideas of death takes many forms. We've already had this conversation that death is an idea and it takes many forms. It is the one idea which underlies all feelings that are not supremely happy. So any feeling of unhappiness, any feeling of being uncomfortable, any feeling of being afraid, any feeling of being separate, what it's saying here, those feelings have their origin in this idea of death. And in fact, it says it is the alarm to which we give response of any kind that is not perfect joy. It is the alarm to which we give response of any kind that is not perfect joy. So in other words, any sensation of being unhappy or joyless, without joy or without peace, this sense of being separate and alone and afraid and uncertain and fearful and in need of safety, whatever form that may appear, in whatever thought it may appear. He said that is the alarm. That is the underlying feeling. It is the response that perfection is not present, that we feel imperfection. He says, all sorrows. So these are the different forms. All sense of loss. All sense of anxiety. Being uncomfortable with yourself, or being uncomfortable in the surrounding, or being uncomfortable in your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions. He said, any of these things. He said, in pain of any form. Even a little sigh of weariness, when there's any level of being uncomfortable, if there's any level of being unsure or uncertain, all this comes under anxiety. It says a sight of discomfort, a slight discomfort, any slight discomfort that you may feel or sense or know, or the merest frown, even a frown on our face, because there's a sense of something missing, something broken, something lacking, scarcity, afraid of the future, guilty for the past. These are all anxiety symptoms. Alarm us that something ain't quite right. It says all of these things acknowledge the thought of death. So all of these different forms. And see, all of these forms has nothing to do with the body. We only think death in terms of, our body's going to eventually what? Expire. No. You ever been riding down the road and you early in the morning and you notice all the roadkill from the night before? And we look at the roadkill and the thought comes into our minds. That's us. And that causes slight discomfort and reminds us that the body itself one day will what? It will cease functioning. And so we take that thought, and that thought becomes a source or an alarm. And it causes certain type of responses in our psychological, mental, physical, emotional self. Begin to think that one day that we're coming to an end. I told you this world was designed to be what? It was designed to be an attack on life, an attack on reality, to get us totally focused on what is not real. And so death becomes what? This huge idea in our thinking, this huge idea in our culture. It becomes almost like the finale of one's life. And we even come together to what? Celebrate it or to mourn it. And it's not even real. There is no death. Because what God creates shares his life. There is no death because an opposite of God does not exist. There is no death because the Father and what he created is one, which is you and me. And all other living things. And so all of these appearances, these seeming appearances in time and space, in form, they seem to communicate to us the acknowledgement that death is real. And so until we transcend what we can see with our eyes and understand and perceive from a place of separation, we seem to take on that which is unreal and make it real. We're doing this all within our thoughts, all within our minds. And thus we deny that we live. So embracing that, we are in denial that we live. We are in denial that death is not real. And remember, we talked about denial should only be applied where we reject anything that is not life. That's the only real, true use of denial, to deny anything that comes into our mind that does not promote life or love or oneness or reality. We have to reject it in our conscious mind. And we'll talk about that. So we think that death is of the body. This is the major thought in humanity. This is the major fear in humanity. That death is of the body. Notice now. The same idea that birth is of the body. Appear to be one of the greatest joy. But it's easily erased when we become conditioned to think that death is of the body. So the very thing that made us excited is the very thing that makes us sad. The birth of a body makes it makes the natural man happy. But the death of a body, the same body, the death of it makes a natural man sad. Notice how I said a natural man. Because a spiritual man or a spiritual being understand that they are not bodies. A spiritual being realize there is no death. And so the birth of a body or the death of a body is neutral to a spiritual being. In the sense that what? It is not even to be considered as a reality. It's like going to the movie and watching the movie. And the movie is filled with drama, filled with trauma, filled with different scenes and scenarios that may be based on what we call what? That's a great plot. Look how they built this suspense up. And then at the end, this happened. And you enjoy it, and you should. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're in this, if you seemingly have a sight into this dimension. But once you get up from the movie and walk away from the movie, you realize it was just a movie. So you don't go out the theater or go out you may have a theater at home. You don't walk out of your theater and walk out into the next room or walk out into, your next activity and act as though what was in the movie is real in your space. No, you said it was a movie. I enjoyed it. It's over. Now I'm going back to reality. And so we think that death is of the body. Yet it is but an idea. Death is just an idea. The Course describes it as a tiny mad idea. It's madness. It's an insane idea. When you take life eternal and place physical death up beside it, physical death is a tiny mad idea compared to eternal life. Just think about that. It says it is but an idea. And ideas are what? Not in the body. Ideas are where? In the mind. Okay. So the idea of death is a thought in the mind. In what mind? It's not in the mind of God. So it has to be in a mind that is what? Sleeping or dreaming. Or hallucinating. Or vain imagining. Or fantasizing. It says it is an idea. Irrelevant to what is seen as physical. So the idea of death is irrelevant to a physical body. The body itself don't know death. The body itself don't know life. The body is neutral. It doesn't know anything. Remember, the Course describes it as a serviceable, it describes it as a serviceable device. It's a communication device. It's not what you are, but it's what you are aware of. You see, you're not a body, but you are aware of a body. You're not a car, but you are aware that you have a car in the garage downstairs, but that's not who you are. So when your car breaks down and you send it off to the junkyard, you don't go with the car to the junkyard and stay in the car. No, the car is not. It's not an eternal thing, a relationship. You understand how separate and apart you are from the car. So apply the same principle. And understand that we are so separate and apart from the awareness of a body. That's not who we are. That's not our identification. We existed before there was a body. We were aware of a body. We will exist even when we become unaware of a body. So we're just aware of a body that we call ourself, with a name and a social security number and a personal history and a timeline. Help me out here. And so it says, you think that death is of the body, yet it is but an idea irrelevant to what is seen as physical. A thought is in the mind. All thoughts are where? In the mind. They're not in the body. Your ability to imagine is not in the body. Your ability to perceive is not in the body. Your ability to reason is not in the body. It's not in your brain either. Your ability to will is not in the body. It's not in the brain either. Your ability to remember, it's not in the body. You can't find it in the body. They can cut you up to 1,000,000 pieces. Even the brain, they can't find your remembrance. They can't find where perception is. They can't say, oh, here's perception, here's will, here's your emotions. They couldn't cut you up and find anxiety. They couldn't cut you open in 1,000 pieces and say, oh, here's fear. It's not, it's in the mind. And the mind is not in the body. The mind is aware of a body, but the mind is not in the body. The mind is completely separate from bodies. I know we're going to school here today, and we should, because we haven't learned this. We haven't been taught this. As we learn and understand these things, we begin to what? We begin to shed ignorance, and we begin to what? Shed fear. When we come to understand something, when we come to understand what the very nature of something, it takes away a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the fear. That's why this teaching is so important. That's why renewing the mind is so important. That's why remaining in an expansive state of growth is so important. That's why leaving the elementary, the basic things, and moving on to more advanced things, more genuine things is so important. To stay stuck in what you know and have known for the last 50 years or the last 20 years, if you're still thinking and understanding the way you understood 20 years ago or 50 years ago, 60. If you only know yourself as you knew it back then, you haven't grown, you're stuck, you're asleep. It's time to wake up. If you've been into an environment where there has been absolutely no change in your perception, no change in your vision, no change in your awareness or consciousness, where are you? You're sitting. You're sitting in a dead place. In other words, you're sitting in a place of what? Unreality. You're sitting in a place of non-existence. Get up and get out. So a thought is in the mind. And death is a thought. It's an idea. It can be then applied as mind directs it. So every thought in the mind can be applied as our thoughts direct the application of them. So we're always holding some thought in our mind. If we don't eventually direct the thought to leave our mind or to reject it, we will eventually what? Bring that thought to pass. What we think about, we will eventually bring about. So if we think about death or we think about unreality, we will bring unreality about. How do you bring unreality about? You would have to fall asleep, or you would have to be dreaming, because you can't bring unreality about. You can only what? Dream of bringing it about. You can dream of suffering and dying and being sick and broke. You can dream of being what? Unfairly treated. You can dream of being a victim, but you can't bring it about. You can experience it in the unreality, in dream and fantasies, in vain imaginings, in hallucinations, but you cannot bring it about in reality. Reality remains what? Untouched. So a thought is in the mind. It can be then applied as mind directs it. But its origin, notice now, but the origin of the thought is where it must be changed if change occurs. So it cannot be changed in the effects. Change can only happen in the cause, or in the origin. So that's why it's important that we learn how to go back to where we originally made our error and make the change. Once the cat is let out of the bag, it's hard to put the cat back in the bag. Once we then took the thought and applied it, and now it becomes another form, or now it shows up in other forms. We talked about these other forms. It's hard to get those other forms back to the original. So thoughts are important. They are powerful. Thoughts are things, or thoughts can become things, and you know that. Things that you don't like. So we have to become comfortable with living in the space where reality is, which is in the unseen, not the seen. We have to become advanced spiritual or genuine spiritual beings to become mature and advanced and to become masters of life. You don't become masters of life focusing on what's already manifest. You become masters of life in the invisible, where you use your invisible faculties, like we talked about: will, your ability to imagine, your ability to remember and perceive. All this happens in the mind. So we become students of the mind. Jesus was a student of the mind. He went beyond the physical. That's why it's called metaphysics. Jesus was a metaphysics. He saw and he thought beyond what was made manifest. He looked beyond what was placed in front of him. Ideas leave not their source. Thoughts leave not their source. So the source of a thing remains in the source. Even though the effect of the extension of the idea can leave its source, but it cannot be different than what the idea is. It says, but its origin is where it must be changed. Why? The origin is the source. If change occurs, or if it even is possible to change it. It says, ideas leave not their source. The emphasis that this course has placed on this idea, that ideas do not leave their source, is due to its centrality in our attempt to change our mind about ourselves. See, ideas leave not their source. We are an idea of God, or we are a thought of God. And God's thought and God's idea does not leave God. They remain with God, even though they can be what? Extended or shared or expressed. And wave of the ocean doesn't leave what? Its source. It goes back into the ocean. When you see the sunbeams beaming down from the great sun, the sunbeam appear to be separate from what? The sun, but they're not. Why? Sunbeams don't leave the sun. So this whole concept that ideas don't leave their source, you have to understand this, to understand that you are an extension of God. And you leave not your source. God is your source. You are an expression of God. You are an idea of God. And you leave not your source. You're never separate from God. Just like the sunbeam is never separate from the sun. Just like the ocean waves are never separate from the ocean. Just like wet is never separate from water. Ideas, reality, truth, leave not their source. God leaves not himself. So what God creates, he's in the creation, and he's still in himself. So this is the central idea that we have to embrace, so that we can change our mind about ourselves, because we think that we are something separate from our source, and we're not. You appear in the person of God. You always have. And not necessarily as a body. There's an awareness of a body, but you're not a body. But you're a thought. You're an idea. You are a mind. And if I ask you where the mind is, you couldn't tell me. Most people can't. If I tell you what does it look like, you couldn't tell me. Most people can't. It is not the brain. It is the reason that you can heal. Why? Ideas leave not their source. So what? In other words, the mind can be changed if it forgets and return to its original what state. That's called the process of healing. It's but a remembrance or but a recognition. When the mind remembers or recognizes, it hasn't left its source, that it remains that it was created. Just in the what? In the remembrance, in the recognition, healing occurs instantly. It is the cause of healing. Ideas leave not their source. That's what caused the healing. That's what caused what? It's like you stretch a rubber band and then what? It retracts back to its original state. That's like healing. That's what healing is like. Because in reality, nothing is broken, nothing is missing, nothing is changed, nothing is altered. Everything remains the same. That's just a loss of the idea, or there's a covering of the idea, or there's an obscurity of something placed between reality and unreality that has what? Taken our focus. It is why you cannot die. This is why I can't die. It's why no living thing can die in reality. Why? Because it leaves not its source, and its source is life. And in life, there is no opposite. So you can never die. The body that we are aware of may change form, may come to the end of its usefulness and cease to have the animation and emotion that it had, because it was being used as a serviceable instrument for the purpose of what? To wake up other bodies, to wake up other minds. But once that purpose is complete, it's laid aside. But it's not death. because it's not you. When you look in the casket, something happens in your psyche. Something says to you, this is not right. This, in other words, it's saying, this is not me. And that's true. But when you look in the mirror, in your radiant aliveness that appears in the awareness of a body, you look at the mirror and you look back at yourself and you say, yes, that's me. Because what it's reflecting is aliveness in a radiant beauty. I mean, you might not think, but you are beautiful. You're an immaculate creation. Not the body, but what is being reflected. And what is being reflected is the light that you are. Not the body, but what causes reflection is light. Without light, there is no reflection. Without God, there is no extension. You see? Without God, there is no life. So death does not exist. It says you cannot die. This is why you cannot die. Why? Because ideas leave not their source. You cannot leave God, and God can't leave you. So you can't die. Jesus said, I am the what? Resurrection, and I am the what? Life. Why? Because he cannot separate from the Father. So when you re-embrace the reality that you are the resurrection and you are the life, it's what we're finding out here as we go through this renewal process, as we're not being conformed to the thinking of this world, but transformed by the truth. You can stand up and say boldly right now, I am the resurrection and I am the life and I cannot die. It is why you cannot die. Its truth establishes you as one with God. So there is only one life, and that we share with God. And we're going to put a plug in it right there. I told you, there's so much here, we can't do it in one session. So we're going to stick a plug in it, stick a pin in it. We'll be back tomorrow for part 2 of Workbook Lesson 167. Don't you miss it. There's a whole lot more here to share. There's a whole lot more here to wake up to. Okay, to wake up to. So let's do it together. All right. Have a great day. It's a great day out there. I'm going to go out there and enjoy life. The one life that we share with God. Thank you so much. We'll see you on tomorrow. Bye-bye.